Bro, the video game industry is cooked. This is this is just cooked, man. Like look at 2025, dude. We have seen some of the most bizarre things happening in 2025. You know, a combination of economic changes, tariffs, and greed have made video games, it's almost sucking the fun out of video games. We've seen stuff like the Nintendo Switch 1 price go up with them threatening to increase other prices. That's really what it is. It's a threat at the end of the day by saying we might have to change these prices. It's a threat. Xbox, of course, increasing the price of things when it comes to their systems and their controllers and stuff like that. And now PlayStation has indeed followed suit. We have $80 video games trying to become normalized and stuff like that. And it's just like, this is craziness. So let's talk about the PlayStation price increase, because obviously that's one of the focal points here. New prices effective starting on August 21st. Similar to many global businesses, we continue to navigate a challenging economic environment. As a result, we've made the difficult decision to increase the recommended retail price for PlayStation 5 consoles in the US starting on August 21st. So today's price isn't tomorrow's price, because today is August 20th. And by tomorrow, these prices will have increased. The updated recommended retail price for PlayStation 5 consoles in the US are as follows. PlayStation 5, $549.99 with a disc drive. A digital PlayStation 5 will run you $499.99, and a PlayStation 5 Pro will now run you $749.99. The recommended retail prices for PlayStation 5 accessories remain unchanged, and we have no other price changes to announce for additional markets. But that to me just means that like eventually it's coming. You know, we are going to raise the price of the DualSense. We are going to raise the price of the disc drive. We are going to raise the price of all of this stuff. And that's essentially what these companies are threatening to do. And when you see just how the video game industry is like shaping up, like it's almost sucking the fun out of things. Like it used to be, as the console generation went on, you got cheaper alternatives. You got price drops on things because the components of these systems were less desirable because the industry was moving so fast. And the prices of these components went down in price. And so they were able to manufacture the systems at cheaper rates. But you're not really seeing that with the current consoles and prices going up. Like video game consoles have somehow become an investment. Like think about that for a second. Video game consoles have become an investment to where if you're an early adopter, it's going to be worth more in a couple of years because of price increases. And when you start to talk about price increases, everything immediately becomes a political thing. You know, one side likes to blame tariffs. One side says it has nothing to do with tariffs. And I am not a political person. I am someone who just looks at things on an individual level. I've never voted. I'm not registered to vote. I don't care to vote because I think the two-party system sucks ass. I think it doesn't represent the vast majority of people, but people have to go along with it, even though both of these two-party systems pander to the most extreme individuals on those sides, and then people just have to go along with it for their own personal beliefs and their own personal reasons. I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. That has nothing to do with me. I'm just looking at this from the perspective of, do tariffs play a role in this? Like, yes, they clearly do. But my problem with just blaming everything on tariffs has always been tariffs are something that always changes. And when a tariff goes down, you don't see companies changing and lowering the prices of these things that they have previously increased due to tariffs. So that makes me believe that maybe there's a little bit something more to this. And when I see these companies, Xbox, PlayStation, Sony, Nintendo, reporting record profits year after year after year, and business is better than ever, and pandering to the shareholders to make them money and stuff like that, it's kind of a hard pill for me to swallow that you need to raise the prices of these things. Now, if you don't see things that way, that is fine. I'm not going to fault you for that. I'm not going to attack you for that. Much like you shouldn't attack me, just because that's the way that I sort of see how this is working out. And I think that it is a multi-layered sort of thing. But the problem is that video games are now like going back to kind of how it used to be. When you look at, video game prices and things like that, when it came to, previous generations, the video game hobby was a more niche thing. It was a very niche thing. It used to be, you sold 100,000 copies. That was a rousing success. You were already working on the sequel to the game. And that was because development costs of games were so much lower. And you didn't have to sell as many copies. Things that were priced high, like certain Super Nintendo games and N64 games, those were priced high because of the technology and the chipsets that were being used in those games. Additional things, of course, the N64 was because companies had to buy the cartridges from Nintendo for about roughly $20, and that's why you had the $80 game. Virtua Racing on the Sega Genesis was a $100 game because it had a brand new chip in it called the Sega SV or the SVP chip that allowed the Sega Genesis to have the polygons that was needed for these games to look like Virtua Racing, essentially. So it was a different time. When you look at something like the price of the Neo Geo was ridiculously expensive because it was essentially a home arcade in your house. So it was a different marketplace. You sold 20 million systems. That was a rousing success. You sell 20 million systems nowadays, you're going out of business. The video game industry is evolving at such a rapid rate, and there's so many options. There's so many different ways to go about it. And to see prices consistently going up in a trend that even if tariffs completely disappeared, I don't feel like the system prices would come down. I feel like they're going to be at what they're at. It would have to be a sort of situation where like nobody is buying the thing, and then the company has to look at it and be like, oh, well, we need to lower the price of this so that people will buy it in order to, have our system and then to buy our games and then to buy our accessories where we're making the money on these things. It's a very volatile situation. It's a very, it's an unprecedented situation. And I'm very curious to see how this is all going to work out. We've already know that the younger generation isn't really buying games like other people used to, like our generations did when we were at that age, because of games that are free to play or free to start and stuff like that. They play the Fortnite, the Roblox, which that's a whole situation in of itself. They play the Call of Duty, the Warzone thing, all these free to play things, and they're not interested in buying games. They're not interested in putting down the money. And yes, there have been success stories for certain games along the way, but it definitely feels like those success stories are starting to become, further and further apart. And I just wonder, like, in 5 years, what does the industry look like? In 10 years, what does the industry look like? How high have the prices gotten? Because spoiler alert, tariffs or not, these next generation, these PlayStation 6 consoles, the new Xbox console, there's been rumors that the PlayStation 6 console might be cheap, but I just don't see that happening with this. I don't see the new Xbox console, being cheap. If anything, these prices are going to go up. You're going to start to see $800, $900, $1,000 for something. Even Nintendo is sniffing around at $500. You don't think that they're wanting to increase the price of the Switch too? Of course they are. All of these companies want to make more money. All of these companies, they don't want to, lose $1. They want to make $2 on a system because that adds up when you're talking about millions of system sales and stuff like that. So I don't know, man. I don't know. Rising game budgets, studios closing, greed, tariffs. It's a whole accumulation of different things. And I think we are heading to a cooked era, folks. hold on, go ahead and buy some of those retro systems, buy those EverDrives, emulate them, because I don't know how the future of gaming is going to be. I'll be along for the ride regardless, though. I'll be updating you guys and talking about stuff like that, but it just feels like we're moving towards a very dark place. And I've talked about things like crashes before and how it's not the scale of 1983, but it's a different sort of crash. And, we're seeing so many cracks in the foundation. It's like, well, at what point in time do we kind of look at how things are going and maybe say, hey, I don't like the way this is going. There needs to be a positive change instead of a negative change. We are the consumers at the end of the day. We are the ones funding these companies. The companies should be, doing what we say instead of doing what they want. And then the consumer just laps it up. I don't know when the consumer lost their balls, but it's happened for sure. Let me know what you think about this in the comments section down below, because this is all just nuts, man. This is all just nuts to me. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. Be sure to check out the other video from earlier today on the Asus ROG Ally X from Xbox, a $900 handheld. Like, it's already here, dude. It's already here. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Hit subscribe if you're new. Later.